Hi, I'm Miss Hearn. Let's get started. In this video, we're going to compare sample and population standard deviation. So in the previous video, we calculated the mean and standard deviation of some sample data, and we went through the steps of clearing the data, the previous data from the calculator by exiting stat mode, and then we entered stat mode again using the data button, and we selected one variable statistics, and then we hit data and entered all of the data values and their frequencies. And then we said, okay, in step 3, we're going to calculate the standard deviation. And when we do that, we hit stat bar and we look at SX, which is the sample standard deviation. But there's also an option for sigma x, and that would give us a different number. This is the population standard deviation. So the reason why we used S, which was 13.11, was because we were told this was sample data. If we had been told this was the entire population of data, then we could use sigma, which is 12.15. So you might be wondering, what's the difference? And why is S bigger than sigma? Well, the answer to that has to do with that when we are looking at sample data, we don't have all the information about the data set. We only have part. And so we need to give ourselves a little more wiggle room. And what standard deviation measures is the amount a typical piece of data differs from the mean. So if we say that the standard deviation is 13.11, we're saying that a typical piece of data is up to 13.11 units away from whatever the mean of the data set was. On the other hand, if we know we have all of the information about the data set, we don't have to give as much wiggle room. We can guarantee that the data is a little bit closer to the average. We can say that the typical amount that a piece of data differs from the mean would be a little less, like 12.15 in this case. So your sample standard deviation is going to be a little bit bigger to allow more room for error. Now let's compare the formulas for sample standard deviation versus population standard deviation. There is only one difference between the two formulas. In the sample standard deviation, we divide by n minus 1. Remember, n always represents the number of data values. And normally when we have n data values and we were looking for a kind of average of the deviations, we would divide by n. But in order to give us a little more wiggle room, since we know that we only have the sample data, we're only going to divide by n minus 1, a smaller number than n. In the population standard deviation, we divide by n. So if I ask you on your test which formula would result in a larger value, then what would you say? Well, the answer lies in the fact that the sample standard deviation is being divided by a smaller number. When you divide a number into a smaller number of pieces, you're going to get a larger result. So the sample standard deviation is always larger because it's divided by a smaller number. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. That helps other students to find the video.